I think with AI right now, there's a lot of excitement. And so people go, we need to adopt AI, use AI, use AI, use AI. And then you've got the two groups where I want a vendor to figure this out for me and have more out of the box type stuff that I don't have to work too hard on, or that I can just, have them implement for me, or maybe, one of their partners or, implement for me. Or I want to do it myself. I want to get Chat GPT or whatever other, kind of tool that I can customize. And so we're going to build this in-house. Pros and cons with both, right? So again, it's kind of I will design it myself and do it or not. And I think we're seeing a bit of the same kind of early CLM impact where people are putting in AI. They don't quite know what they're trying to achieve. They don't quite know what problem they are really trying to solve. And so you slap a veneer of cool looking tech over the same old issue. So I think that's the large kind of problem case that I would articulate with AI today, right? Everyone wants it. They don't always know why they want it. I want it. I don't know what I want to do with it or what I'm going to fix, but I need it because reasons. Don't be afraid. I think which has been a theme in my life overall to just try and do new things. But I think, we live in a time where there's a lot of potential. You can do a lot of cool things with tech. So be optimistic and don't be afraid to experiment and try something. That's just life in general. Things change and you need to be flexible. You need to be willing to pivot. And if you can do that, you'll always be successful.
Are you ready to learn how to grow your entrepreneurial mindset so that you can not just survive, but thrive now and into the future? This is your show. Welcome to PossibLaw. Let's get into it. Navin, I am so excited to have you on PossibLaw today. I can't wait to get into all the crazy world you live of contracts and swords, but it's going to be fun.
Yes, no, thank you, Sal. I always like when we get to chat, and so this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's lots to talk about, including the new gig, kind of what you're doing, the world of AI, legal. But I always like to start these shows by helping the audience understand you as more than the contract maestro. And so I like to ask, what do you like to do in your free time? Do you have kids? What is it beyond the professional?
You kind of answered it already. It's like I have kids, so free time is at a premium, right? So, the truth is I'm a super boring suburban dad for the most part. I have two young kids in middle school and elementary school, and so they take up a ton of my time, with just hanging out. We watch a lot of anime together. In fact, my son and I just got done watching one called Solo Leveling. It's kind of this guy suddenly wakes up and video game rules are applied to him, and so he can level up and things like that. It's a lot of fun. So soccer events, all the fun kid activities for sure. My wife and I like to travel, so when we can, usually get babysitting. We try to leave the country and go somewhere fun. I'm also a gamer, so I love playing video games for fun as well. And, I just finished a game called Claire Obscure Expedition 33. It's a really popular kind of role-playing game that came out. So that's kind of how I decompress. And then, like everyone else, I also watch a lot of Netflix as well. So I'm just kind of clenching my fingers, waiting for Stranger Things, the final season, to come out. And we're watching Wednesday. The whole family is actually. My daughter's a huge Wednesday fan. So that's what we're into right now as well.
I love it. As an aside, I think it's such an interesting business model that Netflix can make a show and then it'll go away for like 5 years and it'll come back and everybody just pretends like it was just there again. I think that's
it can backfire. I'm going to do the LinkedIn thing where it says like a CLM implementation in a way. If you stop and you stall midway and you put a pause on something, that usually kills most implementations. I think it's the same way for TV shows. If you wait too long, I think excitement builds up, but it can also kind of fracture your audience and people just move on and then they don't come back. It really depends on the show. I know with one that Netflix just produced, it's super hyped up in my house, K-pop Demon Hunters. So it's a 3D animated movie. It's a lot of fun, a lot of catchy songs. And then my daughter and I are super fans. I think we're going to probably dress up as characters from the movie for Halloween this year. And so it was so successful that they're now approving a sequel movie, a series, and all that stuff as well. So, but we'll see. If they then wait too long, people will lose interest, and then so yeah. But
I totally agree with you that there's a little bit of that fractured audience piece and
mhm.
the FOMO of community and like kind of like network effect of people talking about it and then you want to see it, you want to be part of the story, right?
Yeah,
Whether it's, Game of Thrones or any of those. It was at least every year versus like, I think Wednesday is like a 3-year gap, right? And so
yeah.
it's a little hard. You're like, well, I should go back and watch it. And has anybody else watched it?
We just so in the and I'll tell you something that kind of cheekily I'll bring up community, although I know we'll talk about it probably later as well. Is so with Wednesday, we actually rewatched season 1 twice back to back because my daughter wanted to rewatch it to catch up because she knew they were releasing it. Funnily enough, on Wednesday last week, right? But so they were releasing season 2, so she wanted to rewatch everything. Then my wife got into it, and so she started watching it again. So we all watched it with her. So that means I've watched season 1 of Wednesday 4 times now at this point. And so we're now in the middle of what's out for season 2 as well. And that community angle is really, when you think about how we are as a species, right? We crave shared experiences. The movies, TV, they are a way for us to kind of have these shared stories, so maybe from ancient times around a campfire telling stories, we've evolved it to now you can share one story across the globe. And so think about what was actually so awesome about Game of Thrones. Yes, it was the show, but then we went to work and we talked with our colleagues or our friends about, did you see what happened last night? Did you see what happened to Jon Snow? Hashtag red wedding events, stuff like that as well. So it was that community that built around these shows, which, I mean, as a showrunner, you pray for that thing to happen. It doesn't happen with every single show, but it's when people get together and they're discussing the show and digging into it. I think that's what takes some of these shows to the next level, beyond just having people tune in to watch the show. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
totally agree with you. On the community thing, I think it's also interesting because I think society is craving more community right now. We did the
Hmm.
whole COVID lockdown. We
Yes.
had so many years of kind of keep yourself at arm's length or
Hmm.
further. And now in the digital age where so many things are online, we almost have this disconnect. There's a whole younger set of people that frankly don't have any idea how to really interact with the physical world in a lot of
Hmm.
sense. And when you give them real community, they're like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? And you're like, yeah, you have to
Yeah.
get out of the house and you got to do stuff. It's not that video games and Fortnite or other games aren't great and you can interact that way, but there's a different level of being in society and doing
Hmm.
things. And so it falls into the same idea of shows, which was it was a shared existence. I could communicate with you, even though I don't know you very well,
Yeah.
about more than the weather, right?
Exactly.
And that's important.
Exactly. These tools are, because I mean, the world has changed. I remember back when I was in a long distance relationship with my now wife, we'd call each other, and we didn't, Skype kind of sucked back then. So video calling was essentially just a disaster 90+% of the time. If you got lucky, you might have a few minutes of clear dialogue. And so we'd use these prepaid cards to, call each other. I was in Malaysia at the time. She was in the States. And obviously, that's no substitute for like in-person conversations, hanging out, spending time together. Today, with my kids, they have, FaceTime and they're calling their cousins and having these conferences of their own fairly easily on iPads or MacBooks or whatever tech tool they have access to. And it's so easy. But again, it's just a supplemental tool. Ultimately, what they want is to spend time with their friends and their cousins, go out, do stuff, get together and play a game, get together and, play soccer, whatever it may be, or just get together and run around my house screaming, playing tag until someone starts crying because they fell down, So I think that in-person interaction is something that we crave. And you mentioned COVID, because we moved to Charlotte right before COVID hit. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I went fully remote. And it was really nice because I didn't get stuck in our legendary traffic here going into the city and out. There's just like always traffic in Charlotte now, especially after the pandemic. But suddenly I found myself at home not being able to talk to a lot of people, where before I drive out to work, and yes, that was an inconvenience, but I have a lot of peers, people that are on the same mission, doing some of the same things. We got to talk, collaborate, strategize, and discuss Game of Thrones as well. And so all of that went away. And I think for me, it actually was, I think it was challenging for a lot of people as well to suddenly go from in person to almost 100% digital. And so once that lifted, I think everyone saw that everyone started going to all the conferences to just meet friends. And it was kind of this wonderful thing where you finally meet these people that they're almost ghosts or imaginary to you because you've only known them through your computer screen, and they say, hey, you're taller than I thought you would be, or it's so cool. And then you're meeting someone for the first time, but at the same time you're kind of best friends as well. So, and you may have realized this about me, Sal, I'm a people person, so I like talking to folks and about anything really, or just listening to their stories. And so I think definitely with tech, really awesome. You can do amazing things, but when it comes to socialization, you can never go 100% tech only. You have to have that human element where you get together, whether it's having coffee or chatting on a panel. That in-person connection really does matter for a variety of reasons, but we all know it matters.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things I keep telling people is no matter how good AI gets, AGI, the rest of it, relationships still matter. I think they're always going to matter. And in legal or any other industry, it's important when you're negotiating contracts. People forget it's mostly about the relationship. It's less about the provision or this period and comma and the rest of it. And so I think community is part of that, and getting back out there and talking to people. It's hard for a lot of people to do that. I think it's almost lost the skill related to it. And it's actually interesting because you have kids, and I have a almost 5-year-old daughter. And so I'm always thinking about, what does the world look like for her? What kind of things do I want for her? And I just saw that this study that came out, they did a focus group of like kids under 12, I think. And they asked them, what's the number one thing they wish their parents would let them do? And it wasn't play more video games. It wasn't watch more TV. It was, let me go outside by myself, right? And we've kind of created this world where people our age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, got it in our head that like kids just get kidnapped off the street all the time, and so you just terrified yourself. Your kids are never out of your eyesight.
Yes.
And they lose all the skills and independence. But one of the things that they seem to lose is some of that community. It's exactly what you said. They just want to run around outside with their friends. They just want to play tag. They just want to be outside. And we're forcing them actually to be in front of a screen. It's very interesting to me.
It is a tad bit hypocritical, and I am guilty as charged of doing this too. It's you don't quite know what happened, right? But whether you call it stranger danger or just the news cycle or the negative news cycle, because everyone knows, I think negative news sells, right? Or scary thing happened versus, hey, Navin went to get coffee today and absolutely nothing happened and he had a good day. So I think that we are kind of maybe overly paranoid. It's always a tough balance, but then you go, oh, but I don't want to be the dad that this happened to, where, my kid got abducted. And so then you overcorrect. For me, it's always a struggle because I don't want to let my kids out of my sight. And so how I try to balance it is, we have a lot of outdoor activity. So I try to facilitate where, hey, let's go to the park after school where all the other kids go. You guys go. I will sit quietly far away from you in the car, so it's like I'm not there, even though I still am kind of quasi-helicopter parenting. But that way hey, if some weird person starts going to talk to my kid, I'll see it and I can step in. Or if someone falls down and needs to, fortunately that hasn't happened yet, but if I have to make a trip to the emergency room, I can do that as well. So I think it's part of it is, it's like anything else in life. If you have a problem, you have to kind of figure out some solutions that work. Maybe the answer isn't, all right, well, let's go back to the way it was when I was a kid. Just leave the house. Just make sure you're back by the time the street lights come on, for dinner and stuff like that, which is how I grew up. I just roamed around the neighborhood with my friends. And I think most people in my generation kind of had that kind of upbringing as kids. It's not the same now. And so my kids, they talk to their friends most of the time through their iPads, because that's the only convenient way that I've given them to hang out with their friends. And so I've been trying to change that. Actually, it's funny that you brought that up, just to make sure that they have activities, whether we go to playgrounds, go to sporting events, attend each other's sporting, because not all of them play the same sport, but say, hey, you attend person A's, soccer match, we'll attend person B's football match, so
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy to some sort, right? Like you convince yourself that if the one time I let them go, they're going to get kidnapped. And so you like eliminate any of that stuff and they lose a little bit of that independence. And
yeah.
I don't think you're unique in any way. I think you're the vast majority of people. And I think it is an interesting thing to start having a conversation about, because I remember we moved to a near suburb of Chicago 4 years ago, right? And I remember getting an argument with my lovely wife about, I just want a world where my daughter can just like go run around. She's like, that world doesn't exist anymore, right? And I remember when we came and looked at the house we bought, we were sitting on the front and there were just like kids riding by themselves on bikes. And I was like,
Yeah.
this does exist. You just have to get comfortable with giving your kids the tools to stand up for themselves, come find an adult, get help when they need it. And again, I am not going to tell anybody how to parent. I've learned that lesson, but I like the conversation because I think it ties into our world as adults and how we deal with community, how we interact with people. And it's kind of bled down into how we're raising our kids as well. And I'm always thinking about those things because I do think, again, whether you believe in AGI or you don't, I think the world's going to change a lot, just like it changed with and just like it changed with PCs. Like the world will look different. So like, what does that look like for my kids?
Oh, yes, exactly. I mean, I think the two pieces to that are ultimately the parenting part. It's about risk management, right? Being alive carries risk of death, of pain, of suffering. We drive cars because we know there's risk attached to it, but it's a risk that we accept or that we have managed through, seatbelts, airbags, traffic controls and stuff like that. So I think, again, going back to, there are all kinds of risks, even in contracts, right? I feel like I'm pushing now, but think about it, right? How you manage risk, people manage it differently. Some people go really extreme and they get called very difficult to do business with. And then some folks, they just don't care about risk at all. And then suddenly you find yourself in violation of several regulations, getting fined millions of dollars a day, or just reputationally damaged, or maybe owing some bad people a lot of money, so there is that. And then the other piece is, I think, with let's what we call AI, or leaps forward in technology. Everybody wants to predict what will happen next, but nobody really expected the internet to change the way the world is to what it is now. Back when it first came out, when we had that first dial-up modem, where I'm logging in and I'm trying to chat with people and suddenly I lose connection because my mom picked up the phone somewhere else in the house, right? No one really thought about Facebook or about YouTube or about doing all these things, or TikTok, or that work would be largely online, because even those of us that go into the office today or have, flex hours and we sit at a desk, you're still working with people that aren't physically there. It's all through the web. Your files are on the web. Remember when there was a big thing about how insecure the cloud was, and so it'll never take off, it's spooky, it's scary. And now, I read a couple of studies over the last couple of months, I remember, where the cloud is more secure than your local servers, actually. So it's one of those things where I think things will change, but people are still feeling out how to apply the technology in new and novel ways, right? Just like they always have. And then you also have to balance that with costs, right? It's kind of the, hey, I have unlimited capability to do X, Y, Z. That's great. But can you pay for it? Because there's an element there as well when you think about support or computing costs or vendor costs, and saying I could potentially do this. It's like saying we could technically send 10 rockets to the moon, but can we afford to? Would we spend the resources that way? So it's interesting. I like it. I'm, like I was telling you, I think before we started this call as well, it's just I'm a techie, I'm a gamer, so I like cool technology things. They are fun. It's like getting a new piece of equipment to drop in your Dungeons and Dragons game, and then you go, what can I do with this?
I think the corollary to video games is an interesting one for a bunch of different reasons, both in how you kind of learn to adopt technology, but also if you're into certain types of video games, whether they're the, sort of adventuring, going through a multi-world event, you learn a little bit of the entrepreneurial mindset, growth
Yep.
mindset, because you fail all the time. Like that's how it is, right? Whether it's like, getting shot in Call of Duty or it's, old school Zelda trying to make it through and beat you're gonna die. So it's like risk,
Yep.
evaluation of risk, learning how to make it through, experimenting. It's a bunch of stuff that's really important. And I'm curious how you got into video games in the first place and how you apply it in your everyday life.
Ooh, all right. This is a good one. So I'll tell you my life story, Sal. So I grew up in a really small town in Malaysia. It was called Seremban. So for those of anyone listening that has no idea what I just said, Malaysia is a small country in Southeast Asia. They are north of Singapore. So that's how you'd find it on the map, essentially. And hot, humid, tropical climate. I lived in it's not a small town anymore, but back in the 80s, it was a small town. And about halfway through elementary school, my school got our first computer lab. So it was these really ancient, by today's standard, 386 processor computers and with floppy disks and all that. No one knows what I'm talking about anymore, Sal. But this is, again,
I
ancient
do.
tech.
I remember.
Yeah, magnetic media, and so that's how I got into tech, really. I immediately gravitated towards it. My friends and we started playing video games. I think that was our gateway into it because it was entertaining for us as kids, Ninja Turtles and Double Dragon. Usually was some form of video game violence. I mean, there was Pac-Man 2, which is also video game violence when you think about it. But we got into that. And then from there, you learn to do other things with computers, write basic programs or kind of understand the hardware. So to this day, I've built all my own personal computers as well over the years. I like putting them together, testing them out. I think what's interesting about video games is they give you a structure that you can follow, right? And I mean, I'm oversimplifying. There's a story, so it makes it fun and engaging. There's a goal, a purpose. Sometimes the story is really flimsy, right? And then you have a toolkit where you can go, hey, I'm creating a character. I want this big two-handed sword, or I'm going to choose to be a magic user or shoot lightning out of my fingertips. And there's goals. What are you really trying to, defeat the final boss, save the princess, or save the kingdom, or, something like that, or kill God. There's a lot of Japanese RPGs that I've played, role-playing games for those uninitiated, that usually involve killing God in some way. Either the bad guy becomes a god, or you have to like fight this evil, person that's masterminding your universe. It's a recurring theme, but you have this grand goal. And so, when you translate that back into real life, because art mimics life, right? I think that's made it really easy for those of us that are gamers at heart to play around with technology, because it is, in a way, a video game. You get this cool piece of tech and you can build workflows, you can build intake forms, you can go on this journey to slay the contracts monster, let's say. I mean, contracts themselves are good, but you have a problem, right? The problem is, in the video game, your final boss. In contracts, it's getting the damn thing signed, and actually, because people always pretend, oh, We need contract. No, contracts are the starting point to a business relationship. I want to buy $1 million in steel so that I can, who buys $1 billion worth of steel so that I can build cars and sell cars. The contract happens before all of that to agree to terms, but people always look at contracts as the be all end all. That final boss you're trying to defeat is, whatever problem your business is trying to solve. So when you think about being an entrepreneurial attorney, I went into law with that mindset. So actually, I did not start out in law school. I never wanted to be an attorney. I went and did computer science for a semester. So about 6 months essentially of computer science in college. And I hated it. Everyone told me I should do computer science because, standard parental advice. You like video games. You're good with computers. You should do computer science and learn programming and learn to code and all that. And I tried my best. I hated it. I did not enjoy it. And so I decided to switch degrees. And then my parents did the other parental advice, which is you like to talk a lot and you like to argue with us a lot. So you should become a lawyer, become an attorney. So, and I said, you know what? That sounds cool. I'll go to law school. So I went to law school and I grew up with kind of shows like Ally McBeal and The Practice. Those were my two growing up, not Suits. Suits came a lot later, but those were my two shows. And so all throughout law school, I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a litigator. I'm going to, be like Bobby Donnell from The Practice, or maybe John Cage from Cage and Fish and Ally McBeal. And I work in a really cool law firm. And, we'll go out to the bar after that and talk about how hardcore and badass we were at cases. While I was in law school, a couple of my buddies thankfully for me, had a couple of parents that were managing partners at different law firms. And so they educated me on what actual private practice at a law firm was like. And that put me off of it all the way. And so right out of law school, I went in-house. And so I got to start with contracts, from that kind of hardcore video gamer mindset. I was a gamer all throughout law school. Most of my buddies were as well. And that kind of, I think, has a way of affecting how you see problems and how you think about solutions and tech, right? It's not a scary thing. It's a fun thing. Like someone that's not a gamer, if I put a complex game like here's Final Fantasy 7, it can seem daunting. But for a gamer, it's like, ooh, this is cool. I get to start playing and I leveled up. How do I put my stats in here and there? Or which gear is better? Or what weird combinations can I come up with that makes my sword swing explode into a volcano and destroy the landscape? So that kind of I think technical but also fun seeking mindset when it comes to tech. Then the other piece of it, I learned to be business minded right out of the gate. So I had a very different, I think, career path than most in-house counsel here in the States. So in the States, you kind of typically the pathway is you start at a law firm and then, you eventually move in-house after a couple of years. And so most in-house counsel I've met, they all got their start in private practice, representing clients and kind of that adversarial nature of what that really means, right? For me, I went straight into in-house and I became really focused on the business side of things, because at the end of the day, the contracts are interesting, but I never liked treating them as just dry academic paper where it's just let's futz about the language and the terms. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's important, but it was about closing major deals, like getting materials so a refinery could be constructed, or securing crude oil sales so that a pipeline could go into construction. So it was stuff like that where there was a huge business outcome, and the goal of someone like me was not to just go, I have a series of preferences that are arbitrary and I have to follow these to the letter and I'm going to delay this contract until my boss comes and yells at me. And then I'll say, okay, fine, we'll do this instead. It was very much let's cut to the chase. We're here to slay the dragon, kill the boss, whatever it is. Again, lots of video game violence in my life, but we're here to, ultimately defeat that final boss. You've got this 500-page contract. what are we here to do, really? To piss and moan about things that don't matter. Let's focus on, and then we'd have obviously debates and discussions with counterparties about very specific provisions and very specific business terms. But it was kind of encoded into my DNA. My job is to close deals. It is not to rubber stamp deals. It is not to hold deals back when they don't need to be held back. It's about closing deals. And yes, if I ever were to hold a deal back, there was a pretty damn good reason that I was doing it, not because of something like I saw this all the time after moving to the States. Governing law. It blew my mind how everyone was holding up a contract over something like governing law. And it's almost always happenstance, And so how I handle something like governing law, because remember, my kind of practice was multi-jurisdictional. We were dealing with companies from all over the world. We already had an assortment of governing laws that were appropriate, that we felt kind of were fair, and that were kind of, I think, internationally accepted, right? If you said UK or New York, few people would fight you very hard on it for a global or multinational deal. But then every once in a while, you'll get something else. And the question then becomes, what do I do? Do I hold up a $500 million deal because, well, they didn't follow one of my 5 preset preferences? Or do I just go and look and see, well, is this governing law actually acceptable? Because maybe it is, because I'm looking at just a few bits of criteria, how debt is handled or how ownership transfers and things like that. And so if this law works for that, what do I care that it's not one of the 5 arbitrary, laws that we've selected? When I moved over here, I would see that a lot of companies, they would just choose, hey, we're based in Texas, so it's Texas law. We're based in Seattle, so it's Washington state law. And it wasn't really research. And you know how it is. The law, precedent, case law, all of it changes slowly over time. So this governing law was selected 10 years ago. It might not be the best option for you today, but nobody does that. They look for boxes to check. And so I think being business minded has really helped me do what I do, because when I moved into my contracts management roles here in the US, I brought that mindset with me. My team and I's focus was about closing deals and making them compliant, right? So we could recognize revenue and things like that. But it became less about, I get a contract and I go, these are the 5 problems with your contract. And it became more about anticipating problems. Hey, I know this contract is going to have XYZ. This needs an approval. Let's just get it approved. Or, this is my second choice. Let's just go with it because it's already an approved choice. But because it's that second choice and not the first preferred choice, people felt like they had to fight that a little bit before they went back to that second choice. And my team did not do that. We were just about getting shit done, really. And I think that's something that's a bit lost sometimes, I think, with contract management. Everyone focuses on, oh, we've got all this data for your signed contracts to track this, or we've got an intake form so that people can submit things, or we even have AI to help you review things faster that's based on your positions, right? But people forget, I think the core focus of contracts is just getting it done, so that we can actually do the thing that we're trying to sign this contract for. And people act like the contract itself is what's life and death, and it's always really interesting to me because I never learned about contracts that way. To me, it was, let's get this flowing. Let's get, are you a Dune fan by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it, but yeah.
The spice must flow, right? Yeah. So it's that's really it. So in the oil and gas world, the crude must flow. It's like we need to keep things moving, not go, hey, we can't move forward because legal is holding this up. Why is legal holding it up? Well, it's something about an indemnity clause that 1.5 times is acceptable, but 1.35 times is not acceptable. But no one's talking to the business or to the CFO to just say, hey, it's a huge deal. Why don't we just accept it? So I think that was where I was also more of a facilitator, I think, which is the other thing that was really different than how I think a lot of my peers here practice, where legal tends to exist in a silo here, right? Where you get something, it's in and out, right? You get a contract draft or a contract request, you do your stuff, and maybe there's some back and forth, and then it goes back out once it's ready to sign, and then, everyone forgets about it until there's litigation, right? But for me, I was a facilitator. So I wasn't just working with legal, I'd be working with my different constituents to kind of go, let's get this wrapped up. I never really wasted my time with NDAs, I will confess. We just rubber stamp those. Like, who cares? If there's something I don't want to share, we just wouldn't share it with you, instead of fussing about, oh, is it 2 years versus 1 year? Because again, the NDA was just a stepping stone that would quickly get replaced by the confidentiality language I put, the big service agreements and that we would sign. So it didn't really matter at that point. So I didn't waste my time with all of that stuff. And so that enabled me to do what I do or what I did. But it was really just about, it was a project. If every contract is a mini project and you're trying to implement the contract, if you will pardon me being cheeky about it, then you've got stakeholders. I would work with my stakeholders, right? Because if I'm saying we can't do this, well, why am I saying we can't do this? Is it a playbook that was handed down to me by finance? Let me just talk to finance. Like, guys, do you really want me holding up a multi-million-dollar revenue generating contract because you prefer net payment terms of 60 days? Could we do 30 days? So, yeah, we can do 30 days. For something like this, we'll do it. There you go. Approved. Boom, let's get this signed. Everyone's happy. Salespeople hit their quotas, and make their big bonuses. And then legal, this is the other thing. We were celebrated for contracts, for being such great facilitators by our stakeholders as well. So when I moved to the States, it was really interesting to see kind of almost the opposite of contracts are a problem. Contracts are difficult. Legal is difficult. Tech is difficult. And I'm going, no, all of this is actually pretty easy and a lot of fun too. I don't know why no one has fun doing contracts anymore. So I've rambled on for quite a bit, Sal. Do you want to pivot to another question or to go in a
in
different
fact,
direction?
I think there's so many good nuggets in there. There's a bunch of things I want to pull out of that amazing rant, which is that in the United States, especially, the point of the contract is the contract. Why? That is not the point. The point is for the business to make money or sell widgets or whatever it's doing, right? What are we talking about? And I think that's interesting because I think it stems from training. And it's that exact thing you said, which is they tend to start in law firms. And law firm training is very focused on repeatable process, precedent. This is how you do things. You're not very business minded. You're not very growth mindseted. You're not high agency. You just follow the blueprint. And then you go in-house and you just now think that's how legal works. And you couple that with something I always talk about, which is I have this framework I use for all kinds of things, including deciding on software, which is I call LIFE, which is leverage, incentive, friction, ego. And the last one is seemingly a huge one in legal is ego. They want to hold on to their big head of, I need to look at this. I'm the only one that can say this. Legal is the last stop instead of I'm part of a team and there's a goal here I'm trying to achieve. And so a question I have for you is, how do we fix the training thing? Is the AI moment a fix of that too? And maybe we get a better system out of it.
It could be, right? I think let me break this up into chunks. I'll be a little generous because yes, I think definitely having that attorney background, I've worked many years to kind of get rid of the chip on my shoulder that I'm super smart and I know everything. And I mean, I can understand why someone would kind of have that ego because it's, becoming an attorney is not easy. What I think the core problem, and I actually had this conversation in Tampa just last week at the clock event I was at, but I've had this conversation many times. And the question is, what is the purpose of your legal department? Why do you even have a legal department? What are you there for? And that usually stumps every single GC that I've ever met, every single in-house counsel, because they've never thought about it. And I try to simplify it into, is your in-house legal team an advisor or an approver? If I went out, right, let's just say, I had a bad day and I decided to set fire to a local department store and I get arrested and I get an attorney, right? That attorney is going to advise me to the best of their ability on what I should do, what I should plead, da da da. And then I can still do whatever I want. So an example you see in movies all the time is, don't take the stand, Navin. Well, there's no Navin doing this, but don't take the stand, Navin. You're highly unlikable. You're going to turn the jury against you. You're going to get 20 years to life. And then the client goes, I'm going to take the stand anyway. And then usually they go to jail after that, because you don't have to listen to your attorney. They are your advisor. You are their client. Or are they an approver? My attorney cannot stop me from taking the stand if I want to in my hypothetical movie situation. But bring that back in-house, right? Is the in-house legal team an approver? They have power. They are supposed to stop everything that doesn't comply with whatever strict guidelines they come up with. Or are they really an advisor, which has a more business facilitating flavor? Sal, if you sign this contract, we're exposed to like 500 grand of risk because it's a 3-year contract and there's no opt-out language, blah, blah, blah. And then you on the business side can decide, hey, do we want to sign this contract, right? Does it make sense for us financially to do this and accept it? That's an advisor role. And so park that line of thinking, right? Are you an advisor or are you an approver? Because most people come from law firms, you have that law firm DNA and law firm thinking, which again is, I will do ethically, I have to do the best possible job for my client. And that leads to a very conservative approach, right? To litigation, to contract negotiation. I have to get the best possible deal. I have to be extremely one-sided. This is an adversarial negotiation in almost all things. So again, you see, I've seen it play out with law firm to law firm negotiations over a contract when we hired external law firms for expertise we didn't have, right? And so you could see the very big difference in how they would negotiate versus how I would negotiate with my counterparties. And it was highly adversarial, highly confrontational. It would be polite. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes people would cuss. But again, you're trying to get the absolute best contract terms for your client. That's your job. You go in-house. And now suddenly you're a law firm attorney, you're in your first in-house role. Does anyone tell you that you're an approver or you're an advisor? Typically, no, because no one's really thought about the existential nature of an in-house legal team beyond just, hey, we're a corporation. We should have an in-house legal team for reasons, And so you now, law firm attorney, getting your first in-house gig, what do? Well, you default to that approver role. I have to get the best deal for my client, and I will check every box, and I will be extremely one-sided because I'm not business-minded. I am just getting the best deal, and no one tries to set that straight. So ultimately, it's a leadership thing, right? Where you look at the executive team and you go, how do you want your legal team to function? Not just we have a legal team and they review contracts, but what does that mean? Are they supposed to stop contracts? Should they let them go through? Should they just tell the head of sales, hey, if you close this deal, these guys can cancel in 6 months and you're going to get your comp clawed back and, blah, blah, blah. Is that really what you want to do? We typically don't do this. So I think there's a lot of that, I think, Sal, with in-house legal teams where they don't always know what they're supposed to be. And they try their best. And then they draw on that law firm experience in many cases, and it makes them act a certain way. And then we see that manifest in they're so difficult to negotiate with. They're holding things back. They're dragging things along because, again, attorney-wise, the worst thing you could possibly do is agree to bad terms. Whether something happens from that 5 years down the line, you might not even be at the same company by then, but that's their focus. And so that bleeds into tech implementations as well, right? So we codify that type of behavior into a CLM system and we get the same thing. So I think to then answer the third part of this, which is whether AI or like AGI, the latest tech, right? I always hate using the term AI a little bit because it's just, I still have to go, AI is actual thinking machines, not the AI that we have today. For me, AI is HAL or the Terminator or Cortana from Halo, or ED from Mass Effect, or Commander Data from Star Trek, if anyone else knows that reference. But AI, I think, can solve this in certain ways, right? But not if we make the same mistakes we did with other forms of legacy tech that we already use, where we just train it to do all the wrong things we are already doing. Because now you're just taking, hey, let me train this AI to do to follow all my bad habits, and then magic will happen somehow. So I think it's able to let us assess what's going on a lot faster as well. It allows leadership more visibility into how departments are functioning and how departments are interacting with each other in a way that legacy tech can do, but not necessarily in real time and not necessarily with anything beyond dashboards and things like that. So I think understanding how your legal team is operating, again, I'm playing with words here, right? But understanding how your legal team is operating, I think is a lot easier to do and fix if it's done through an AI large language model and with agents as well. And I think part of it is also it'll fix it by, hopefully, because not everyone has been successful doing this, right? But getting a lot of busy work off of people's plates, because that's the other problem. It's, I heard this all the time with clients, customers that I'd worked with over the years. I know I have problems, Navin. I know that we need to fix all these things. We just don't have the time. The problems that we have are keeping us from having time to fix the problems. I'm already working weekends. I don't have time to solve the problem that's making me work weekends. So it's kind of a catch, right? Most legal teams on some level, they understand the issues that they face, but they just lack the ability to fix all of that. And so while AI can theoretically fix it, there has to be some effort behind it, right? You need expertise. If you're not able to build it in-house, then you need to bring in a subject matter expert, whether that's a consultant or a temp or whatever, but have someone else come in that does have the time and the understanding that you just don't have time to build on your own, and then roll things out in a sensible way to actually solve your problems. But if you just try to half-ass it with tech, I don't think it's going to solve your problems as well. So it's kind of, that's my non-answer or lawyer answer, right? It's like you can, but you probably won't if you don't do it right.
If you want to continue building your entrepreneurial mindset and enjoy our content, we would love for you to subscribe, hit the bell, follow along. You can also find us on our Substack, PossibLaw. Abrazos. I mean, I don't think it's a non-answer. I think it's actually a perfect answer, which is it requires work. It's hard, and hard things usually require work to get to the other side, and that's okay. And I think you nailed on the head something there that I hear endlessly. I don't have the time for this. And it's the same problem in adopting software and building process and all the rest of it, is that lawyers tend to think siloed me instead of systems thinking of, yes, it's going to take me 5 hours to build this process out, but once it's built out, 50 people can use it. It's that leverage part I always talk about, is like, think in systems, not just in silos. But I also think what's interesting there is that I love the way you talked about advisors versus approvers, because I think even that to some extent gets stuck. I think some general counsel think they are advisors when they're actually approvers, or if they're approvers in the way that they think that they are the last stop and they have to make every decision instead of that advisor role. And then in the inverse, I think a lot of GCs that think they're advisors, they will say things like, if you sign this contract, we might have this indemnity and this, et cetera, and we might be at risk of whatever. And then they just stop. Right. Yeah. And then the C-suite's like, yeah, so what? Like, so what do we do? And then they think, well, if I'm telling the C-suite what to do. Now I've become an approver, where it's actually
Mhm.
not. You want to be part of the business and
Yep.
understand that, which is why one of the things I always joke around about is like, I think the best thing that could happen is when we adopt all this new software is like every time you open it, there's a button that pops up that says,
Mm.
what is the point of this contract? A lawyer can't, it won't redline, it won't do anything until you answer that question. Because
Yep.
I think you're right in a lot of sense. We get in this like redlining game or fix the comma, add the provision, the governing law, instead of just asking the basic question, what are we trying to achieve here?
Yep.
And that's really important. And so that also goes into another part of the entrepreneurial kind of mindset, growth mindset that I try to teach on this show and just generally talk about, which is there's something called a abundance mindset or scarcity
Mhm.
mindset, right? Abundance
Yep.
is the whole world has lots of stuff. Everybody's going to
Mhm.
get their share. We're going to be great. Scarcity is there's not enough of it. We have to own it as much as we can, right?
Yep.
And it's something you said there, which is lawyers tend to think in the what's the worst that could happen
Yep.
instead of, well, what's the best that could happen? This could be
Mhm.
an amazing relationship that drives the company forward for the next 10 years that you just said no to because of governing law. And I think that is a key thing here. And so I'm very curious to talk more about how you've seen your own
Mhm.
journey progress because I think it's very inspiring in a lot of ways. I mean, you are an immigrant, you
Mhm.
came here, totally different system. You know, you were an in-house general counsel, then you moved into kind of doing your own, well, I think there's multiple jobs, but you know, eventually doing your own thing. Now
Yep.
you're at Agiloft. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey. Let's start with what made you want to leave Malaysia and what I think you've talked about publicly was like a pretty great job to, you know, come here and try your hand at, you know, becoming the
It's
contracts maestro guru.
it was a girl. It's the most cliche. It was the most cliche story ever. I'll tell you. So I have to acknowledge, I think I was really, really fortunate early in my career. I got what would be considered a dream job to a lot of people. As essentially a kid, I got to review contracts that were amazing and far more complex than anything that I've seen since then, even with clients and even with large companies here. And it was amazing. And again, I think it helps with that mindset of I'm doing this cool stuff and I want to be part of it versus another NDA or statement of work where someone tried to slip a change to the MSA into it. So I get that no one's enthusiastic about change orders or NDAs, contract review. What happened was I essentially left my job to move to the States to marry my college sweetheart. So my college girlfriend, we met in law school and she had moved to the States in Minnesota, of all places. And we decided to get married. We had been dating long distance for a couple of years as well. So my wife's Nigerian as well. So she's not Malaysia. So we're a very international family as well. And so we, kind of once we decided that we were going to get married, it became a question of, well, where do we want to settle down? Where do we want to live? She actually had lived in Malaysia as well. So do you want to live in Malaysia? Should we live in London maybe or move to the States? I think those were really our three options. And since she was already in the States, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm still young. I think I can handle one incredibly stupid life mistake. So, because again, this was quite horrifying to a lot of my family members. Quit your stable, well-paying in-house job at this massive oil and gas company to fly over and be unemployed essentially, right? So I moved here. And I mean, I felt really bad. I still remember my last day at Petronas. I couldn't leave the office. Like I was there. I had nothing to do, but I kept finding things to do till about 8 o'clock at night. And then I went to have drinks with some of my coworkers for the last time. It was very bittersweet because I loved that job. It was so much fun. If it wasn't for my now wife, I would probably still be there in all honesty. So I guess for context, this was the Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So it's at one time the tallest building in the world. Baller location. It was a lovely place to work. Uh, I left it all to marry my sweetheart. So I moved to the States, was unemployed for a couple of months because I was a 90-day fiance. So, I went through before the TV show existed. I feel that I could have been on that show, so,
I'm sure you would have been a star.
call me if you see this. But I was a 90-day fiance. And so I got my first job in the States at Thomson Reuters, the Westlaw people, right? Lots of fun. So we were actually my wife and I both worked for them in completely different roles. She was in sales and I was on the contracts management side. Again, Westlaw, everyone knows them, but really a wonderful place to work. And so I kind of brought my negotiation style and all that to negotiating the larger contracts that they had with a lot of these big AmLaw 100 firms, large corporate clients. So, if you were to just go and get a contract today, it's probably just a standard online pre-generated non-negotiable stuff. But with larger clients, you'd have these special non-standard contracts that we would create, negotiate, and all that stuff. So at one point, they're all renewed. No one's looking at them now. But if you went and dug back a couple of years for any big name law firm, you'd probably see my signature on their, Thomson Reuters contracts actually, or, sometimes some of the people on my team as well. But so that was a lot of fun. And so I got to do the thing I liked, which was negotiate contracts, close deals. I think I brought that mindset to my team. And so we were the golden team. I think the sales team loved us not because we just approved whatever they wanted, right? Because that would be us not doing our jobs, but really that we got to be proactive. We found solutions to problems. We realized that ultimately the goal was, hey, we need to close this deal so the company makes money, but close it in a sensible way, right? So we were all a group of people, us, sales, finance, marketing, working together to close these large deals. And so that was a lot of fun for me. And that's how I got into CLM and legal tech, actually. So before that, everything was old school. I didn't say this earlier, but my contract repository was these huge filing cabinets on rails with a gigantic wheel I would turn. So that was my smart repository. So forget about doing a search to find all contracts that can be assigned with notice. That wasn't happening unless Navin decided he was working for the weekend, but that was my first, the job at Thomson Reuters, contract management, where I dabbled in what we call legal tech today. We used Aptus and a couple of in-house tools that were kind of Frankenstein together with there were no APIs and all that, just kind of put together. And you could call it a CLM system. Nobody in their right mind would, but that was our CLM system. And it was a lot of fun for me. Everyone hated it. That was the funny thing. I went in and everybody despised using Aptus. And I got into it. I ultimately, kind of started launching a few projects, to simplify, automate amendments and things like that were being done manually. And so I really got into it. And so I think this was the early days of legal ops where it wasn't called legal ops. And the legal operations person was just the person in the department that was willing to do all the stuff no one else wanted to deal with, so reporting, starting to track time and all that. So I really got into it. And so that culminated with me leading a large project to really simplify contracts across the entire legal organization. So, because obviously Thomson Reuters has the news and they had finance and all that as well. And so that was, I think, a pivotal moment for me in my career. And it was actually my then head of sales that was my mentor that was really frustrated with slow contracts were, because again, it was costing the company money. It was costing salespeople their, commissions. People were missing their quarterly targets. Typically from what I've heard, if quarterly targets are missed, the executive leadership team doesn't like that very much as well. So I've heard. Maybe it's not true, Sal, but
I can't believe that's true.
Right. So I got the opportunity to lead that project because it was already 1 year in, nothing had happened. And so I was super excited. I'm like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And we relaunched everything. I remember one thing I can tell you about is contract it was everything, right? So think about your entire contract transformation project. Every single thing, playbooks, templates, clause libraries, tech, everything you can think of, we did it. But one of it was templates. We had so many different contracts for so many different things. And so I stacked it up with a stack that was about, I think, 8 inches high. And my pitch to everyone to let me just redo everything into a standardized single terms and conditions was, if a massive firm wanted to actually spend lots of money with us and buy lots of products, this is how much paperwork they would have to review and sign. And when you see that actual stack of like a physical representation of sometimes how difficult it is for people to conclude business, it can be more powerful than showing metrics and numbers and a pie chart. And so that's what I did. And so that was really fun, because I had a little T-Rex that I still have, that I use in the photos for the PowerPoint deck and all that. So from there, I moved. So it was a huge success. I kind of made a bit of a name for myself. No one knew who the hell I was outside of Thomson Reuters, though. But I was just another person there, right? I moved into legal services after that. So that was my first stint in what, ALSPs, I guess, is what we still call them today, alternate legal services providers. And so at the time, Pangea 3, a fairly large ALSP, was owned by Thomson Reuters. They have since been sold, and they're now Ernst & Young Legal Business Services. A lot of my friends are still there. But I moved to legal services, and this time it was contract repapering. So again, using AI to analyze what's in your repository to identify what needs to be amended to be compliant, or large projects to repaper contracts for a variety of reasons. That was a lot of fun. I was kind of running a lot of different projects with mostly large financial institutions, so I got to see that. But also, I had that experience of working with banks and doing large derivative contracts and stuff like that from when I was in oil and gas. So I got to kind of exercise that muscle that I hadn't really used since I left my old job in oil and gas as well. But everything actually changed at that point in my career. So a couple of folks had moved to a different company called Integrion. They were another legal services provider. They're fairly well known and pretty big. They've done pretty well over the years. And so at the same time, my wife and I were thinking about leaving Minnesota. So we had the two kids at that point. So my daughter was 1, my son was 3, and we didn't have much family in Minnesota. We had, my wife's uncles and aunts, but we didn't have nephews and nieces or cousins for my kids to play with. And that became really important to us. And also, I was kind of getting tired of Minnesota winters. You can only shovel your driveway at 2 a.m. so many times before you go, you know what? I think I'm done with this. And what happened at that exact time as well was I attended my brother-in-law's wedding in Charlotte, and we had family here, and I saw my kids playing with their cousins at the wedding reception. And it just, I know, broke my heart, melted my heart. I didn't want to leave Minnesota. I was just I really, really hate moving. It is the worst experience ever. I try to avoid doing it. But when I saw these kids playing, I still have the videos from, we rewatch them. It was just such a powerful moment where I have to move to Charlotte. And so I spoke to these guys, and they were looking to open up a center in Charlotte to, draft, review, negotiate contracts for larger clients. And so that's what led to me really kind of moving on. Otherwise, I'd probably be back in Minnesota as well. So I took the job, and we moved out to Charlotte and started our lives. And it was the most amazing thing we ever did. It transformed our lives to have like family and the cousins so close by. And so super happy with that choice. And I think that's also where I started kind of doing more consultant type work and working with more clients than I did in the past, and getting more active on LinkedIn. And Back then, I used to call myself the legal operations witcher because I was big in this was before the TV series became super popular. Well, it's about when because I was into the games before the show, just like Henry Cavill, the actor in the show was as well. But that's how I got into legal services, and from then it kind of snowballed into me doing consulting projects, implementing CLM systems, and that kind of then led me to other roles with, Eversort. Of course, I led their implementation team there, implementing CLM for clients. And then I became head of legal ops at Modernizing Medicine, which they are essentially legal tech, but for clinics instead. So kind of practice was really interesting to see the healthcare side of it because doctors have very similar problems to lawyers as well around process and tracking and data and automation. And so they were doing really cool things on that front as well. And then one thing I always wanted to do was kind of start my own consulting firm. I just wanted to have a small number of clients. And I was at a point in my life where I wanted to spend a ton of time with the kids. Like my son was wrapping up elementary school. And so before you know how it is. I think my kids like me now, but I can see them slowly start to become embarrassed by me as well.
Yeah.
So I know I'm on borrowed time to a certain extent, but I left to start my own consulting firm because the opportunity presented itself. And so I actually did that for, I want to say a year and a half. So Black Paladin Solutions. And and I actually worked with a couple of large clients over that time with CLM implementation, the usual consultant stuff, right, Sal? And what system to choose? How do you actually fix your issues? The I don't have time. Can you come in and, XYZ this for us? So it was a lot of fun. And I got to also spend a ton of time with my kids as well. But one mistake I did make, and I'll say that did make, is I blew my travel budget like you would not believe. I think I was just in this frame of mind where I just wanted to go to everything. So I started going to conferences like Legal Tech Talk in the UK. I mean, I got invited to speak on some panels and all that. So I had an excuse to be there, but I was just, I'm going to go. So I was flying everywhere. And, it was a lot of fun on that front as well. And with Agiloft, obviously, I was familiar with Agiloft just like I am with a lot of other CLM platforms as well. I'd never, to be quite honest, I'd never really considered a community role. I mean, I think, whether you call them evangelist or head of community or, these roles where, you want to be able to interact with your larger community, and that's your customers, that those are people that are maybe interested in your platform or just in that same professional community, legal ops, maybe procurement and sales as well, right? And I never really thought about doing those roles, even though I'm friends with all the people that do this, right? In all these other companies, and we take little selfies when we get together at Clock and stuff like that. And so, but in speaking to the Agiloft team, I think that their focus on building a thriving and vibrant community was really interesting. And like I said at the start, I'm a people person, right? So I'm just going, well, you know what? This seems like an amazing role where I get to actually talk to people and be friends with a lot of people that are doing what I've done, or perhaps doing what I've done in the past better with cooler technology. And this is all really interesting to me. So in my current role, I'm focused on obviously building out the community. That's the website where our customers interact with each other. Sometimes that's asking questions. Sometimes it's sharing pictures of their pets. We have, things like that going on as well. It's attending events. It's about bringing people together, where I think that for me, success really is if I have two different people that are both implementing CLM or that are going through a particular issue, if I can connect the both of you and have you have a conversation, that's a win, because that's what I like to do. I like making friends and I like helping other people make friends as well. It's kind of like how you and I met, right, Sal? We met at class and we just got to talking, and next thing you know, here I am on a podcast with you. So I think that ultimately, if I were to distill what my job is, There's probably a lot more KPIs and goals that I have to, obviously go into a system. But at its core, my job is just making friends and helping other people make friends. And then through those relationship, information exchanges, experiences exchange, people solve their problems. Because I know for me, when I was getting started out, how I learned things was not just by myself. I would ask people questions. I would go to trusted advisors. And so, yes, I like being that trusted advisor and I love answering questions for people, but I want to go one step further where I'm connecting different people because there's plenty of people that are way smarter than me in this space as well. And if I'm friends with them and I know someone else that could benefit, bringing them together, I think is very gratifying, if I would say that.
I think there's a couple things that I love about your journey. One is, don't dismiss the spouse thing. Spouses are the force multiplier. I
Yeah.
always say this, like, you find a good partner, oh my God, they unlock everything for you. And so flying halfway around the world or all the way around the world for somebody is a great reason as anything to do it. So there's that. The other thing that I heard there is, I think throughout this conversation, you have shown yourself to be what I call doers, like a high agency person that is willing to fail, to learn and improve. So you're willing to put yourself out there and try things at every level, right? I mean, the example of Thomson Reuters, like, you didn't have to be the one that redid their entire system.
Mm-hmm.
You thought it would be beneficial. You wanted to learn, you wanted to improve, and so you went and did it. That is a very entrepreneurial, high agency mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a little bit of risk. You have to experiment a little bit, but you come out the other side of it, and oftentimes you will, at a minimum, have learned something. I think that's a really important thing for people to remember, is that most people's jobs are nonlinear. They don't go A to B to C to D. They jump around, and I'm not sure you end up at Agiloft as the community swordsman because you just were a great lawyer somewhere, right? I think part of it is the history that you had, and I think that's something important for people to remember. And so I love that. And I think it's really important for people to remember that finding community most of the time is about just putting yourself out there and trying and talking to people, and you make friends, and then you get connected to somebody else and you find an interest, whatever it might be. Could be dogs, could be, anime, could be, you just love contracts, whatever it is. And I think that's an important thing for people to remember. We've talked a lot about your journey, about being entrepreneurial, about experimentation, about trying stuff. And one thing that I wanted to make sure we talked about today is both what AI and legal looks like. And again, I appreciate this whole AI thing, right? Because like 5 years ago, it was ML and NLP. And before that, it was, something else. I just use AI as like a catch-all sort of, so that everybody understands, whether it's generative AI, whether it's old school ML, machine learning and NLP, natural language processing, whatever it might be. I think it's all encompassing at this moment, especially in legal. And so I want to talk about where you think we're going a little bit in the legal industry, what might change, and also tie that back to where Agiloft sits in that. Because I think the CLM space, and for those of you who don't know CLM, I'm trying to get better at like defining the acronyms as, whether you call it like a contract legal management platform or whatever you want to call it, right? Managing contracts. We're in an interesting space where it's maybe easier than ever to stand up what appears to be a CLM of old, right? Which is a repository, something you can query, find stuff. Obviously, Agiloft and others have layered a whole bunch of stuff on that and are trying to become more AI native. But I think it's an interesting space. So I want to try to connect those two ideas together. And so I want to start with, where do you think we sit right now and how legal is changing with?
Oh, that's going to take way more than we have time for today, Sal. But
A
I think
snippet of your thoughts.
so. So I was talking to a friend recently about exactly this, and I think AI is having a CLM moment, if you will. So I want to go backward in time a little bit to, when CLM was kind of still fairly new. I think still today as well, you get two different groups of, I guess, users or adopters. One goes, I want to buy a full platform. I want to get a CLM platform from vendor X and just implement it. And the other type of user is we'll build this in-house. We will, kind of define this and create our own personal system with varying degrees of success. That wasn't the point I was trying to make, but it's kind of just early adoption. Let's get in there. Let's start implementing these vendors. Aptus was used, I think, widely as a CLM system back in the day before, I think, I'll call our now current crop of CLM vendors that are a bit more advanced. You get no code or low code workflows and stuff like that you can kind of self-manage on. But people thought CLM will solve all of their problems. Just buy it, copy paste everything we're doing today into this system. And what you had were a lot of spectacular failures, right? People that there's a joke in the community that CLM stands for a career limiting move. If you implemented CLM in the early 2000s, you were setting yourself up for big trouble, and that wasn't fair necessarily to CLM, but rather it was all about how you implemented it, right? You're just the phrasing is you kind of, hey, you're automating your problems or you're automating your inefficiency through the system. It's not the system's fault. You implemented it the wrong way. It's like me buying a Lambo and then deciding to drive it off road. It's not going to work the way it was designed to work. So that's that CLM moment I was talking about. I think with AI right now, there's a lot of excitement. And so people go, we need to adopt AI, use AI, use AI, use AI. And then you've got the two groups where I want a vendor to figure this out for me and have more out of the box type stuff that I don't have to work too hard on, or that I can just, have them implement for me, or maybe, one of their partners or implement for me. Or I want to do it myself. I want to get ChatGPT or whatever other kind of tool that I can customize. And so we're going to build this in-house. Pros and cons with both, right? So again, it's kind of I will design it myself and do it or not. And I think we're seeing a bit of the same kind of early CLM impact where people are putting in AI. They don't quite know what they're trying to achieve. They don't quite know what problem they are really trying to solve. And so you slap a veneer of cool looking tech over the same old issue. So I think that's the large kind of problem case that I would articulate with AI today, right? Everyone wants it. They don't always know why they want it. I want it. I don't know what I want to do with it or what I'm going to fix, but I need it because reasons. It's popular. FOMO.
There's a lot of FOMO going on right now.
Exactly. But also it is evolving, right? And so I cannot say when we'll reach peak AI. There's obviously a computing power element, heating, cooling, energy consumption. We don't talk about that enough, I think, when it comes to what we colloquially call AI, right? But there is an underlying cost to that that also doesn't make it the best solution for every single thing. And so in just the past couple of months, in speaking with people in legal ops, in legal, I think what most people are looking for is some guidance around AI. They are vendors to be subject matter experts. I don't just say, hey, I've got AI. Tell me how I can use AI to solve my problems. Yes, I could figure it out myself, but hey, by the way, Sal, the reason I need AI is I don't have time. So therefore, I don't have time to figure out why I need AI or where I can best deploy AI. Because that's the other thing, you're trying to ultimately, an AI deployment has the same rules around any other tech deployment. I need to make a return on investment, right? If I spend $1 million deploying AI, someone's going to want to know that they're getting a return on that $1 million investment. And so that means that I have to deploy AI strategically to get the most bang for my buck. And that may not always be contract redlining. It may not always be, smart repository. I can easily search for stuff. It may be something else. It may be in my workflows. It may be as a legal front door, or it may be as nothing to do with CLM at all, and an autonomous agent that's monitoring my legal emails and answering the let's call them stupid questions that kind of come in. Hey, what should I do with this NDA? Or, well, here you go, Navin. Here's a link to submit it into your CLM system. I think taking a lot of that busy work out. So I've kind of done my traditional Navin ramble, Sal. I'll summarize it as this. I think with AI, lots of cool stuff that you can do with it, lots of potential. Where people tend to struggle right now is they don't have very specific, clear pain points that they know they want to deploy AI to solve. They need there's not everyone, obviously, that we do have experts out there, but they need hand holding. And a lot of folks are turning to vendors, including CLM vendors, to say, hey, I could get an AI tool and try to do everything on my own, but I would much rather you show me how I can best deploy AI in the entire contract lifecycle management cycle from start to finish, where you guys are the experts. You guys build these systems. You work with all these different legal teams and consultants. You, meaning you, the vendor, tell me, where should I have AI on the inside of my CLM? Where should AI be deployed? And you might deploy AI at 5 different specific points in the entire end-to-end lifecycle for contracts. And point 1 might be best for me. Point 2 might be best for someone else. Point 5 and 6 are critical. So then I can kind of pick and choose what to deploy first, or deploy them all at once, but realize that this is where I'm getting the most bang for my buck as well. So that's, I think, my take on AI. I think it's very important. I think that there are issues that people don't really always understand around consumption and cost for AI because they haven't kind of hit critical mass. But if you think about a fully autonomous AI system that's kind of like magic, take Iron Man, for example, Jarvis, the AI, in the suit, but that's also running all of Stark Industries. Is that possible? Yes. Is it affordable right now?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of possibility, and I love the optimism, because normally I find myself in a situation of fighting with people to adopt technology. So the most overwhelmingly amazing thing about AI is that everyone's on the bandwagon, so much so that we have the opposite problem now, where someone like me is saying, hey, cool your britches, don't go overboard with AI, have that measured deployment. Versus with CLM, I'll tell people, just go. You need a CLM system. That spreadsheet that you're using, it's not going to cut it. It can cut it for when you were doing 10 contracts a year, but you hit this point where you need an overarching system. And I think that's the other, limitation with AI. You've just got, the reality is, with especially larger enterprise corporations, you have a ton of different business platforms. You can't just get rid of them. What you need is AI to kind of weave in between them. So AI is also, I think, that next level of integration. So, we have the traditional API integrations between systems, and now we have middleware that makes it easier as well, depending on the system. Not always, but you have API integration. So 5, 6 enterprise platforms can talk to one another. Classic example is Salesforce and your CLM system of choice, right? They talk to each other. You can submit a contract through Salesforce. You get updates back, blah, blah, blah. Having an autonomous AI agent just monitor all these systems and all the underlying data and act accordingly, I think will also become the new integration, where I can have all these systems that at the end of the day are cheaper than a wholly encompassing enterprise smart AI. Again, that doesn't really exist, right? But I can have AI in the background looking at all these systems and doing cool things, right? Like prompting management that, hey, we have bottlenecks because Sal is taking too long to review his contracts, or, that I'm picking on you, Sal. I know, Sal.
Pick on me.
A word to the wise, Sal is never a bottleneck with contracts, but you get where I'm going with this. It's just, you can have these multiple different platforms, and AI is the ghost in the background that sees the all-seeing eye of Sauron.
Oh, Sauron. I think an interesting things there you said is, and it's something that I see a lot, is We are at this moment where there's new builders coming in, people that never touched legal before.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more money and interest, and it's almost a perfect use case for a large language model in a lot of
Yep.
ways, right? And so you just get this influx of technology,
Mm-hmm.
but that means that even though everybody wants to adopt it, there's just so many more choices that it's very difficult to decide what is real,
Mm-hmm.
even from some of the older players who now all of a sudden are AI native, and you're like, you were a spreadsheet box like 6 months ago. What are we talking about here? Right. And so I think it's very hard if you're a legal department, legal ops, even if you're
Mm-hmm.
very well versed to even keep track of what is going on, but
Mm-hmm.
even know if you're kind of being sold a bag of goods a little bit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to make sure that part of what I do when I'm talking about AI and legal and software is helping people better understand how to choose tools. And that's part of what I
Yeah.
do in consulting is how do you ask the right questions? And that's partially learning and taking ownership of we're in a moment in time where you can't just keep your head down and say, I'm too busy. It's time to like step up and learn. And
Yeah.
here's an opportunity. But I did want to talk specifically about Agiloft because I know you were
Mm-hmm.
there. And in some ways, they're like old school, and yet I give them a lot of credit. They have really invested in trying to bring themselves into this new age.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to give you the opportunity for our audience to better understand where Agiloft sits right now, who they're right for, because again,
Mm-hmm.
that's part of it, right? Not every legal department should buy Agiloft, right? They just shouldn't. It's just not how it
They
works.
they absolutely should, Sal.
I understand where you sit, but my point is, I just want to better understand where Agiloft sits, where you are trying to go.
No, no, absolutely. I think everyone has an AI focus. So I think just being general, no surprise, we do as well, right? And so I think in speaking to our CEO a couple of weeks ago, the core focus really is AI, 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 and community. So and I think a part of it is also trust, right? So I'm going to give you a community theme, but also I think something that really matters when it comes to AI. There is a lot of noise out there in the market, right? And there are a lot of overnight AI experts that have not proven themselves as I have successfully deployed AI and actually gotten it to work well for X number of companies. We're still in the optimism stage, right? And so that's where some people are also looking to kind of hold back and wait to see how this pans out because maybe it won't give you much of a return on these three things, but for these 10 things, it will kind of mindset. So trust is really important. And so I think Agiloft, just like a lot of other large legal tech vendors that deal with enterprises at scale, we're looking at the best way to implement AI in a sensible, measured way that can actually work for our customers and make it effective versus just saying, hey, here's a chatbot that you can ask questions and that's all that you can do. I think going beyond that, dealing with agentic AI as well. So I think when it comes to Agiloft specifically, there's a lot of energy and investment around AI, but not just to say we have AI, but kind of integrating AI in a way that makes sense. I'll take it back to remember how I know I need AI, but I don't quite know what I should be doing exactly. That's where we come in, right? Where we are going to integrate it in a sensible way in the overall platform so that yes, you can use it to redline your contracts and all that, but also, yes, you can use it to pull up and get insights into your repository as well. And automating different aspects of the contract lifecycle using AI. But also, I think there's an acknowledgement that AI isn't the answer for every single thing. So and this isn't Agiloft specific. I think this is actually for the industry as a whole. You think about AI and costs, right? AI has a model where the more you use it, the more it costs, and someone has to pay that cost. Now, granted, it's a small cost for each individual thing. It just adds up, right?
Yeah.
Like how there was that report about how OpenAI is losing X number of millions of dollars just from people saying please and
Yeah.
thank you
Right.
in prompts, right? So when you think about a traditional CLM intake form, hey, fill out this form to send it to legal. And I'll say, what's the total value of this contract? It's $100,000. If it's $100,000 or more, it has to go to Sal for approval. Otherwise, Navin could just approve it. Something simple like that logic is automated. There's not really a lot of, or really any computing cost going into something like that. If I were to automate that with AI and have, well, analyze the contract, pull out that it's making X amount, and then automatically send it to Sal and have it kind of overthink. I'm giving you a really basic example, but again, you get where I'm going with this. I think that's where that mix of more traditional, I hate using the term traditional, but like I think lower computing cost technology and then higher computing cost AI married together will be the best experience for most users and most customers. And I think that's where Agiloft does really well, because we have a lot of smart people in-house that are tackling this exact problem in embedding AI in the right parts of CLM. And I think there's an element of there are a lot of AI companies out there right now springing up by probably over the course of this podcast. We probably have 5 new
Oh yeah, for sure.
AI vendors that just made Series A or just came out of stealth. And many of them, and I actually got to evaluate a lot of them while I was a consultant as well. It's all interesting, and I think they have great novel ideas and concepts as well. But it's execution that really matters with tech. It's I can have a grand idea about where I think your, entire implementation or legal transformation can go, but who cares? It's about executing that. So, which is the other piece. So I think our customers stick with us because they trust us, not to just randomly roll out AI and say, this is great, buy this, and things will be good. I think it's that measured, sensible, intelligent way to implement AI on the inside of Agiloft itself to have it work. But the other thing is I'll bring it all the way back to trust. I think having that proven background and that element of trust. And I think also people don't talk about the services side of SaaS, I think, which is the other piece where you have a lot of AI companies that are really great and they have great tech, but you need more than tech as well. I think when you're catering to large enterprise deployments, you need people, you need subject matter experts, you need folks with experience that know how attorneys really work day to day. And I think that's how we also support customers on their AI journey, not just from having AI, but being able to guide and support as well.
I think that's an awesome summary of this idea of the right software at the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
AI doesn't solve everything, just like SaaS doesn't solve everything, right? You have to find the right moments. But I also think it's important on the trust factor and the cost factor that people remember. If you change your whole model to use AI at every single instance, guess what? The price of tokens is going to go up. Anybody who thinks otherwise is just frankly wrong. There's no way these companies can make money unless they start raising money.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, a lot of it is being subsidized by venture capital, and that's a difficult thing where you rebuild your entire stack, and now the token cost is very high, right? It's not quite the same as free. So I think that's important for everybody to remember. But I love what you talk about trust, knowledge, and the right place at the right time. Yeah. As we close out today, this has been a fascinating conversation. I know we can do this again probably 7 times.
Oh, you and I could talk for the whole day, Sal.
Forever, right? You and I could talk forever. I mean, we could talk about just anime probably for another whole episode if we wanted to. So I like to close out this podcast by asking my guest, what would you like the audience to take away from your conversation today that they can use in an actionable way? And so what can you give them that they can take away from today?
That's always tough to narrow it down. I think for me, it really is, don't be afraid. I think which has been a theme in my life overall to just try and do new things. But I think, we live in a time where there's a lot of potential. You can do a lot of cool things with tech. So be optimistic and don't be afraid to experiment and try something. I know you can't always do this in a corporate environment very easily, but I think when you have these new tech tools, treat it as fun. Don't treat it as, oh my God, this is another system I have to learn, because the satisfaction you get from deploying new AI tools, in as much as I've been cautioning all of you, don't go crazy with AI tools, I think can be a lot of fun. I've been having a lot of fun deploying AI in my personal life, for almost everything I do. I just set a challenge for myself to just use AI for everything. And I learned very quickly what it's great at, what it sucks at as well. I think the other thing that I would leave all of you with is, you know, community is very important to me. It's been really, really beneficial to me, both in my personal life and my career as well. And I would say, hey, follow me on LinkedIn. We can become friends, right? But also, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I think the legal ops and legal tech community is incredibly welcoming to new ideas and new people. So if you're new in this space, if you're still learning, if you just kind of jumped on the AI bandwagon and this is your first taste of legal tech and legal operations, reach out to people. You'll find that there's an extremely welcoming community. People like Sal and myself that would love to talk to you, would love to answer questions, or just be an ear for you to vent to if your implementation isn't going as well as you'd hoped.
Which is like always so.
Exactly right. There's always, but that's life, right? I think when you talked about implementation, I've talked about it as well, Sal, but that's just life in general. Things change and you need to be flexible. You need to be willing to pivot. And if you can do that, you'll always be successful. So yeah, that's my spiel to close out, Sal.
I think that is inspiring advice that everybody can take action on and do very well in their personal life and their career. And so thank you so much for coming on PossibLaw. I can't wait till we do it again.
Thank you, Sal. It's always fun to chat with you.